Okay, so welcome to this presentation on trading with a news feed. So I want to kind of, with this presentation, I want to obviously go over, you know, we do a lot of kind of doing it with trades and showing you how we make money and all that stuff, which is fine. But what I want to do with this presentation specifically is to kind of give you a more in-depth, like go into the news feed. And kind of really go into the detail about why you should have a newsfeed, and also if you've got a newsfeed, how you can use it properly, right? And because a lot of people just, they'll use a newsfeed and they'll just be confused about what's going on, what headlines do you pay attention to, how do you understand how it all works. Maybe there's even features of the newsfeed that you're not even taking advantage of at the moment, So there's loads of stuff like that going on. Now let me just have a look here. Okay, yeah. So we're going to go into a bit more detail about that, and I think at the end, I don't want this presentation to go on too long, but I think at the end what we'll do also is we'll go and do a bit of Q&A, because a lot of people struggle with this, and a lot of people kind of might have heard that using a newsfeed is a good thing to do, and maybe that's what they should be doing, but they're not quite sure. A lot of confusion. So we're just going to kind of go through it and help you really understand the benefits of doing it. Now, if we just take a look at this bit of a presentation before, it's very, very brief. Once we've done that, what we're going to do is I'll talk to RANsquawk this week, because obviously they're the newsfeed I've used pretty much the whole time I've been trading. Ever since I've had a newsfeed, RANsquawk is the one. They're probably regarded as the best in the business, particularly in London, in the UK anyway. And there's a couple of competitors, but RANsquawk are generally regarded as up there. And that's who I like to use, and that's who all the professional, all the brokers, all the professional firms that I ever work with, RANsquawk is always on in the background. The squawk is always on. Now, I talked to RANsquawk before I did this presentation, and because I wanted to give something to the members, I wanted to make sure you guys could get something. A lot of people want to use a newsfeed. So if you want to have a newsfeed, RANsquawk have agreed to do a 50% offer, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But just the headlines here, if you after this presentation, if you're interested, we'll go over this. But basically, you say 50%, and you don't need a credit card to sign up, basically, and you get free access for a few days. So it's literally, even if you're kind of on the fence about whether to actually pay the money, you can get free access for a few days anyway with a temporary login that you'll get straight away. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but I just want to kind of go over that. So let's come back to the newsfeed. When you're trading with a newsfeed, what I'm going to do is go to the charts first of all, and we're going to look at a trade that I took just to illustrate the process more than anything. We're going to go deep into the newsfeed in a moment, but first we'll start with the process. So you can see a trade here. The trade we're going to look at is this one on pound dollar. I've done quite a few videos on this one. You've probably seen it. If you haven't, that's okay. We'll just go over it again. The reason I'm using this trade is simply because it illustrates trading in newsfeed perfectly. Now, so the bottom line here, you can see I've drawn it on the chart, but because it was a fast trade. In fact, let me go to the 5-minute chart and see if it's a bit clearer here. You can kind of see the arrow, the entry here, and then the exit here. And you can see basically it was 50 pips, and it was a fast trade. Within 10 or 15 minutes, I took 50 pips, and there was no drawdown. It was literally risk-free in terms of how the trade played out. There was no messing around. Now I was sat there with my finger on the trigger, but essentially this was a trade that came from the news feed, right? So we'll just briefly go through this to see if you, because of those people that haven't seen it. And the only reason I'm picking this one is because this is the most recent example of a good trade. To trade these kind of opportunities, you've got to have you've got to be able to be sat there with the squawk on and your charts open, kind of paying attention to the market. You've got to be there, from London Open through the session. And when these things happen, it is nice, easy pips, but You know, nothing comes for free. You've got to obviously dedicate the time to sit there. Now, if we just look at the trade, I'll just walk you through it. The reason I want to look at the trade is because of the time. This trade basically came from a squawk about the Bank of England vote, the rate hike vote, and everyone was expecting the 9 board members of the Bank of England to vote, 9-0. So all 9 of them in favour of holding rates where they are and not doing much to change monetary policy. What actually happened was, and bearing in mind the sentiment of the pound at this time was quite negative because of Brexit and all that stuff. So we'd had quite a bit of a sell-off on the pound going into this event. We had this little rally up here off another data point, but generally, if we go back, the price was recovering from quite significant lows. We'd had a big sell-off over the last week or few weeks. So the sentiment was negative. And remember, I'm always banging on about the trades come when you find something unexpected happen, when the markets realize something new, or something happens to change the market's view, or something that it wasn't expecting. And this is a classic case. So everything was pretty negative. Bank of England were on hold. Nothing was going to change with the rates anytime soon. Everything's quite downbeat, right? Then all of a sudden, 12 o'clock, which was the release, you see the time here, 12 o'clock, the release came out, and it was, instead of being 9-0, it was 8-1, which means one person on the Bank of England board voted to increase the UK interest rate. Now, you might think, well, 8-1 is still pretty significant majority. However, the point is that this is a massive change versus how the market were viewing it. The market was viewing it as, Bank of England's about as far away from hiking rates as you could possibly get. It's not even being mentioned. It's, not even worth thinking about. All of a sudden, we've got a situation where they must have talked about it, because at least one person has sat around the table going, you know what, guys, I actually think we should hike here, and I'm going to vote for the hike. That would obviously have instigated a discussion or whatever. That definitely would have took place. And now we have a situation where actually this conversation, this possibility of a rate hike suddenly isn't miles on the horizon. It's been brought quite a lot closer because it's already been talked about, right? Even though it's still 8-1, the fact that they're discussing this and that even someone has voted for it, that's a major shift in the sentiment, particularly for the central bank policy divergence against other currencies. This is a major shift here. And I instantly realized that, and you can see it came out at 12 o'clock, and it took me 17 seconds to get into this position. Now, you might, again, a lot of people think, oh, you need to have some kind of software that's lightning fast to get in and blah blah. You don't. 17 seconds it took me to get into the market. Like, if you sit there counting 17 seconds, that's a long time when all you've got to do is click a mouse. Now, obviously, the key came from the fact that I recognized that the news was an opportunity, and I understood the center. I had done all the groundwork in beforehand, and I knew what was going on, and I knew what I was looking for or not looking for. And so when I heard that, it instantly rang an alarm bell in my mind, and I was like, that's wrong. That should not be the case. The pound is definitely going to go up from there because the market will be surprised by this, right? And if the market's surprised, that's when the prices move. That's your key. That's the first lesson that you need to learn. And the newsfeed delivered that. And the most important thing was it's fast, it's instant, but you don't need to be reacting within milliseconds. It took 17 seconds. That's a long time, right? 17 seconds. And I took 50 pips out of the market. Now, I could have held for a lot longer and carried on going up, but I just wanted to get in. Well, now, here's the other thing. This is the value of a squawk, right? If we go to the news feed and you see the squawk here, okay, when you have that turned on, that essentially is like an alert system. So when things are released, you haven't got to read them. You don't have to sit there reading headlines and reading announcements and looking at calendars. The analysts do that for you. And so when something happens, literally they shout it out. And that's exactly what happened on this trade. I wasn't watching the news because I actually thought that event was a non-event, right? I wasn't even looking at it. I didn't prepare for it. I didn't plan to trade it because I was like, the BOE were pretty clear last time. nothing's going to happen. They're not even close to doing anything. So this event is a non-event. Nothing's going to happen. It's only because I heard RANsquawk shout it out, 8-1, 8-1, instantly. And I was like, hey, well, you know, I just knew that was a trade opportunity, and that's how you took your 50 pips. Now you can see, obviously you have to do the work in the background. You know, you have to understand the sentiment. You have to be researching. For you guys, you have to go through the course. You have to understand those fundamentals, follow the forecast, interact with your coach, do put all that groundwork in. But essentially, it gets you to the point where when you have that understanding, the squawk suddenly starts feeding you really good trades in real time that you can take advantage of. And depending on the size of your account, like, you don't need a massive account. It's like 100 quid a month, £150 a month, or $150 normally. Like, you know, depending on the size of your account, you don't need many trades. Like this 50 pips could potentially have paid for the whole month's cost, right? So I mean, I would definitely say you have to factor this in, because you're going to definitely have more trades if you're in a situation where you can even 2 or 3 days a week. It doesn't have to be every day, but even if you just trade, you know, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the most active days, or even, you know, if you trade risk events, whatever it is, if you're in an opportunity to take advantage of this type of thing, it's worth it, right? And you'll see that if you get it. You know, I use it. There's a reason why every trading desk in the country uses them. It's because of that advantage. All the analysts do all the reading, the analysts do all the research, the analysts are watching, like, you know, 50 different premium news wires like Reuters, Bloomberg, Dow Jones, M&I, all that stuff, and they're the ones, and then they just shout it out as soon as they see it. Okay, so the first major benefit of the news feed is, of course, speed, right? And that's the biggest point that I wanted to walk through, and hopefully that trade illustrated how I make pips. And you know, I think we did a feature a couple of weeks ago about some students that also took the same trade. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a few interviews that we did, and again, you know, like multiple people take the same trade without having any contact with each other, because they all saw the same opportunity. So that's the first thing. That's one of the big ways you can really get a lot of value from it. Now, what's another way? Well, the other way is when you use a premium feed, you obviously get access to premium analysis. Okay, now we all know that things like Forex Live exist and all that stuff, but the depth of research on a place like RANsquawk is just so much deeper than normal. So, for example, if you go to the preview here, this is a good illustration because it's FOMC. So it's FOMC right now. So we've got something going on that we can look at. And let me just, I'm going to see if I can put the squawk on. Let me have a look if I can do that. That's John saying put the squawk on. I don't think I can put it on while we're doing the presentation, but essentially the squawk isn't something that's on all the time. It's just, it literally is there for times when you need the information fast. So it's not someone talking all the time. It's quiet most of the day, and then when something big market moving happens, it will get shouted out immediately. So let's just go back to the research. So that's the speed. So the next thing is the research, and the research element is, again, premium, and you've got things like Forex Live, but let's just have a look at this. So first of all, we've got FOMC as a good example tonight, right? So the preview for FOMC, you can see the depth in analysis here, and essentially this helps you prepare for each major risk event. And the other thing, like, you won't get one of these for every risk event, but when RANsquawk prepare a preview or a research article, you know that risk event is important, and it will tell you why it's important. It will back it up with all the previous data. It will also give you expectations from the major banks, Barclays, Rabobank there. It will kind of give you an expectation of what the market as a whole is thinking. This is really valuable information if you're thinking about, you know, trying to trade and taking trades and stuff like that. The previews and the research is great. Now, if we just go to, there's a research section here, and if we just go in there, they also provide a wealth of really useful information. So, for example, you've got a calendar of key events. Okay, so for May, you've got all the key risk events that are going to potentially move the market. for each month. That's big because it gives you a very nice, easy overview. You've got central banks, so you've got Hawks and Doves cheat sheet. You've got obviously previews of FOMC. They've got a preview of the Norges Bank as well, which is another central bank. But all the most important stuff that you need to know, like option expiries. Option expiries are quite big in terms of the price action because they very often get a reaction, and the major pairs particularly respect these levels. So it's good to have an idea of when these are expiring, so you kind of know which prices to look at. Like there's a wealth of information here that you just wouldn't get for free on places like Forex Live. Forex Live do good previews, they do that, but this is just the depth of something like RANsquawk is so much better. And of course, if we go back to the headline, you know, FOMC here, and then when the thing's released, what they also do is they will also give you the analysis, right? So they'll really go into detail and explain what's going on, what it means. They'll explain also the reaction. So for example, if you see dollar going up or down or whatever, they will explain that reaction. So in this case, there's been a subdued reaction because it was pretty much expected by everyone. If there was a big reaction, they will explain that very quickly. And again, I think I mentioned this in one of the webinars this week. The reason for that is because the analysts at RANsquawk are in touch with, you know, with desks at major brokers, major banks, investment firms. They're all talking and communicating with each other. And these, you know, and RANsquawk's job is to basically talk to as many professionals as they can, gather the data, and then generate kind of a view, a market overview. So this is like the best place where you're going to get the consolidated view of the market. Now, obviously, there's an element of interpretation. You need to figure that out, but that just comes with practice. So if we just carry on with this research, so for example, you know, we had ADP today. Again, the Squawk is the best place to get the news fast, but then later they'll post in the feed, you know, within a few seconds, and you'll get kind of another explanation of what the market's doing and why. And I just want to go through the biggest one for me. This is the one I use the most. Is we've got the daily European opening news, and at the beginning of the session, obviously I've been asleep. This is like where you get your sentiment. This is where you understand what's moving the markets each day, and using this correctly is very important. And the best way to use this is to just look for things that have happened that change the overall sentiment. So by following these every day, you'll get an idea of what the overall sentiment is. And then when you get that, then you can see, actually that's, you know, so for example, here's the good example today. Pound sentiment has been quite positive for the last few days. This morning, we had a little bit of negativity on the pound based on these kind of discussions about, you know, the EU barring Theresa May from negotiations and stuff like that. Now, the question is, we obviously had a sell-off in the pound off the back of that, but the question is, coming into the London session, there's the information. Does that change the overall picture as it stands currently? And the answer was no, because ultimately negotiations aren't going to actually start until after the election, right? So if negotiations aren't going to start until after the election, all the chatter now is just kind of, you know, it's irrelevant really. So you might get some short-term reactions, but you don't want to try and be jumping into the pound to short it at the lows, because very likely it's going to kind of get, you know, it's going to kind of get held up. It's not really going to carry on throughout the whole session. And again, you just get, if you ask yourself that question on every piece of information you read, does this change the outlook? Is this fresh information? Does it change what the market was previously thinking? That is essentially the key to interpreting these kind of analysis, you know, and research articles on a daily basis, and this is where you'll get your trades, basically. Okay, and they'll also give you some good information. And again, through the session, you can see updates, currency updates. It is really, really, really good stuff. And if I just want to come to this one, at the end of the day, you get a wrap towards the end of the London session. You kind of get a wrap up of what happened, explanations why. So if you've heard of the news feed, you haven't done it yet, I think we can get, if you go for the standard offer in the in our membership, you can actually get a 2-week free trial, I believe. So you can even try it for free. But even with the 50% offer, which we've just negotiated this week, you can still get a few days for free. So it's just worth checking. And you literally physically can't pay until RANsquawk call you and set your account up. So there's no, you don't need to put your credit card or anything like that. There's actually no reason why you shouldn't be testing this and checking it out for yourself, basically. So the research is the other thing. The research goes on through the day. The research is attached to each post. So, for example, we saw that here. We've got the Fed FOMC. The result is announced, and then the research, on a shorter scale, is continued. Again, it just helps you get a really good feel for the market. Now, the other cool thing I want to look at here, and most news feeds have this or similar. Like, there's a few different news companies, and they all have kind of roughly the same kind of things. But this one particularly is pretty cool. This is the ECB. So RANsquawk have exclusive access to the ECB webcast. And what that means is this feed is actually 30 seconds faster than both Bloomberg and the ECB's own website. Right, so even if you go to the ECB website, you're going to get it 30 seconds slower than you would here. Now, this is obviously a premium feed, but when you understand risk events, when you understand which ECB events are going to be volatile and market moving, you can make it depends on the size of your account, obviously, but this is kind of stuff that gives you a massive edge. To have the information 30 seconds ahead of pretty much the rest of the retail market, right? Most of the people, because obviously a lot of institutions are going to be doing the same kind of thing, but going further down the ladder, most people aren't going to have this access. You're going to get a distinct advantage over a significant portion of the market by having this kind of news so far ahead, basically. Now, we also looked at the headlines, we looked at the research, and what I wanted to also show you. Actually, I don't know what I've done here. I've gone through I've gone back to the old site. Oh, here we go. Hold on, let me just get it. Now, sorry, I'm back in the new site. I just got a bit lost. Right, so the other thing I want to go over and explain how to use is the chat feature. Okay, because you'll notice down here there's a chat box, and this analyst chat is like, this alone is gold, but you need to understand how to use this. So, for example, we've got a chat in the membership, right? So if you use that chat, you might notice that your coach is there. He's hopefully quite helpful and will help you, give you a bit of guidance on your trades, give you a bit of input. He's there to help you however he can. The analyst chat, they won't do that. If you start talking to the RANsquawk analyst about your trades or about whatever, they'll back up. They're not interested in giving you. They're not interested in giving you advice or stuff like that, but they are there to give you information. Now, the advantage of the RANsquawk chat, so for example, let's say you see a big move happening in the charts. Let's say all of a sudden you're trading dollar CAD and all of a sudden it starts going down 50 pips. You've got no idea what's going on. There's nothing on the calendar. You're not quite sure. You can literally pop into the analyst chat and say, hello, what's going on? What's moving dollar CAD? As long as you keep it to informational, so don't ask for his opinion or his advice, but ask for the facts. So what is moving this currency at the moment? What's coming over the wires? What's the reasons, etc. They will then check all the premium wires, which of course is the fastest way to get the news. Now, when I say premium wires, I mean things like Bloomberg Terminal. I mean things like Reuters Icon. Like Bloomberg Terminal costs about £2,000 a month, right? £2,000 per month, and it's on a 2-year contract. So you've got to literally commit 50 grand just to access that kind of news wire, and that's the news wire that RANsquawk are looking at all day, essentially. So, I mean, to pay like £150 a month is an absolute bargain, really, when you consider that the actual information you're getting is worth thousands. And then when you add up all the news feeds together, you've got Icon, MNI, Dow Jones, it starts to get to tens of thousands per month worth of wires. So they can go and check that for you, and then they will come back with an answer. And again, you get the information you need, and then you can basically make a trading decision. If the thing's gone down and you realise it's nonsense, there's no reason behind it, it's just a price action move, or it's just a bit of buying or selling interest, again, you can make a decision. If something significant is happening, If something maybe significant is going on in another market or something you've missed or overlooked, again, it kind of consolidates all that information into one place. So you haven't got to be trying to have, 10 screens with 15 different pieces of information and trying to keep track of everything. RANsquawk does all that for you. And then even if, if you've still got questions, they've got the chat there, and they'll, get the information as quick as they can to give you the answer effectively. So that also is a really cool feature that not many people are aware of, and something that I use like on a regular basis. That chat thing is very, 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 it's brilliant. But you do need to understand how to use the chat, because if you go in there trying to ask them what trades they should take, they're not going to be interested in that. They're professional analysts basically, but the level of information you can get is actually incredible. So that's just a run through the field. I don't want the webinar to drag on too long. That's a really good run through of RANsquawk. Now, like I say, if you want to do it, if you want to sign up and test it and get the 50%, that offer's there. While we do this, if you've got any questions, maybe you've been trying to trade the feed, maybe you're on the trial, maybe you've got a question, type the questions in, because I'm happy to help and happy to go through any kind of maybe something you're not quite sure about in terms of how to use a newsfeed, etc. Type those questions in now, and we'll go through them. Hopefully there won't be that many, because I've tried to kind of be as comprehensive as I can. Now, what we'll do is just go through where you can find it. So if you go into the membership and you click on the Boost Profits little tab, what I've done is I've temporarily put this link here. So basically, you can just go in there and literally click the link, and that will open up a page, and it will give you a form essentially, and then you just fill that form out. And like I say, as soon as you fill the form out, you'll instantly, within 5 or 10 minutes, get an email with logins. I think you're actually on the next page, you'll get a login. So you can literally start using the feed and having a little look around and looking at the research, and maybe even using the analyst chat tomorrow. You can check that out immediately, and then RANsquawk will call you, and then you can, after a few days, you can decide whether you want to sign up or not. If you don't, you just tell them you don't, and then they'll close your access down. If you do, they'll take your payment and then get you signed up. Now, just want to go through it again. If you're not in the EU, it's $900 per year, which is 50% cheaper than you can get it, and you can check that. Go to their website yourself. Give them a call. They're very, 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 very rigid generally. They don't normally do discounts like this. This is literally trying to get it's like trying to get blood out of a stone, but we've managed to do it. They are good guys down there. Got a good relationship, so we kind of got them over the line. And of course, if you are in the EU, you have to, it's in pounds, and then you have to pay VAT as well. But that's just the way it is. But again, it's a no-brainer. You might as well just go and sign up, because you don't need your credit card to do it. You get your temporary access, and you just literally, to do it, just go into the membership, click on that button, and then you'll see it there. Very, very simple. Okay, so let me just go through some of these questions. Nick, would you have traded FOMC today given the news as predicted? Not really. There's nothing to trade in my view. I don't think that, you might get some little spikes here and there, but again, I don't think there's going to be any. Well, I didn't anticipate there'd be any new information that was going to cause the market to get overexcited about buying or selling dollars. The only thing that could have possibly done that is if they would have, like added something more hawkish, for example, which without a press conference they generally don't do. So I wouldn't have traded this event just because the expectations are so muted. But of course, other events like the March one, I'm not sure. In the membership, in the TTP membership, we've got a. Let me just have a look at this. I think it's in this section. This one here, FOMC analysis, 15th of March. Now, let me just click it. So basically, this was a webinar that we did live. We basically traded through FOMC live, explained it, interpreted it, why it's important, blah blah blah. So like the last FOMC announcement, we actually planned a whole webinar around it, traded it live. Like it was a big thing because obviously they were going to hike. and we actually anticipated the dovish hike. You'd find it quite interesting. It's quite educational. So I do definitely trade it, but we make a big thing about it in the membership. But if there's nothing going on, then obviously there's no point doing that. Scott, is a discount available if you've already signed up? I signed up maybe 6 weeks ago. Yes, if you're on the 20% discount, they've said that you can cross over to the 50% discount. Obviously, you have to pay the 50% annual up front, but if you're using it and liking it, then you can do the crossover. That's available. So if you've already on RANsquawk on the standard rate, or even on the 20% discount that we normally have, you can still get the 50%. So go and sign up, and then when they call you, just explain the situation, and they'll sort you out. Stefan, when is a news event priced in? That's a good question, actually. When is a news event priced in? That depends. That's a good question. That depends on how unexpected the information is, right? So if we look at, I'm trying to think of an example. Like essentially, I believe like US data is pretty much priced in. So, if US data keeps coming out quite good, you're probably not going to get too much of a rally on the dollar, because that's what we're expecting in order for the Fed to keep hiking, right? We're kind of in this path of decent US data. So therefore, now we're at a point where good US data is pretty much priced in. So if the next US data point is good, probably not going to get too much of a positive reaction, because that's what that's what the market expects. If the data starts going south, all of a sudden, and that starts to change the market's view of what the Fed will do next in terms of hikes, then of course you'll get a bigger move. So the answer to the question of when it's priced in all depends on how big the unexpected element of the data is. Like how much of a surprise was it? The more of a surprise it is, the more it changes the picture, the bigger the move, the longer it will take to get priced in. If that makes sense. It's kind of like the pound dollar on if we look at when did this get announced? April. Can anyone remember the date when? Can anyone remember the date off the top of their heads when the snap election was announced? It was about. Was it about like? Here it is. Here we go. Okay, so for example, here's Stefan. In answer to your question, like we had the pound down here at like 125, right? And the pound had just reacted off this 126 level and got sold off heavily because it was negative. Sentiment was negative. Everyone was downbeat on the fact that Brexit's going to hurt the pound and all this stuff. All of a sudden, Theresa May called a snap election. All of a sudden, the market took that as very positive for the pound, and of course, the price rallied. Now, because of the shift here, because of the sheer shift in sentiment, this took hours to play out initially, right? Hours to play out, and then even days, right? So kind of like, hung around for a bit, but essentially made its way higher, up past 129, which is kind of where it got to. But like, that was a big thing, right? So, there were lots of times where when you get a big shift, you've got plenty of time to take advantage. Scott, I find it quite difficult to translate the information on the feed into actionable trades. Well, again, this is a good point. There's nothing wrong with saying that. That's a lot of people have the same thing. The best way to do that is to watch it and then watch the price. And over time, you'll learn, you'll understand how the market operates, right? So, for example, with the dollar, you can kind of see that dollar hasn't really moved. I think it spiked a little bit, but hasn't really moved massively. Hasn't really moved massively, but that's because it was largely expected. And so then you can go, okay, so every time the market's expecting something, generally there's a bit, the moves are pretty unpredictable and there's not really much going on. Okay, got it. So then to avoid those kind of events where it all comes out as expected, right? Something like Brexit, like when I learned from that, like I traded the US election based on what I'd learned from Brexit, because I'd never traded anything like that before. I'd never experienced a scenario where there's such an anti-establishment movement, right? Literally, my whole trading career, I have no idea how the market's going to react to that. But after watching how it reacted after Brexit, I was like, okay, going into the US election, I was like, okay, last time pound dollar rallied to 150. The market wants Remain to win, So it's going to vote that, it's expecting that, so it's going to get all positive and get all happy and, you know, excited into the you know, the closing of the polls. Pound dollar went up. So I just took the same play on dollar yen going into the US elections. I was like, well, everyone wants Hillary Clinton to win. That's certainty. Market thinks she's like a 60-70% chance to win. Everyone's loving it. Dollar yen, you know, if it's the same kind of thing, the dollar yen should go up. This week, I've got the same feeling with euro, right? And again, it's not because I've got magic skills. It's just because Brexit, pound dollar traded up into what the market was expecting. US election, market traded traded dollar yen up into what the market was expecting. French election, I anticipate euro to be traded up into an expected Macron win. That's it. You know, whether that plays out, we'll see. But that's the only reason why I'm long euro at the moment, purely because of that expectation, you know, of what I've learned from watching these things play out. So yeah, it's a bit of practice, but you know, it's not like, I mean, I'm in the same boat, right? You know, with that's an example of how I learn and adapt my trading, even now, to these new things and how these things develop, basically. Farhad, after the news release, there's a spike and then the price moves back again. It depends on the news release. Again, this is about understanding risk events. It all depends on the news release, what the expectation is, how the actual figure changes the expectation. If it doesn't really change anything, or so for example on NFP, we had NFP last month, right? The data was, I can't remember which way around it was. The data was either really bad or really good, but average earnings was the opposite. So everyone, was it a dollar? Was everyone buying dollars? I can't remember the exact. I think everyone was buying. I can't remember now off the top of my head. I think everyone was buying dollars. So NFP came out. I can't remember the exact details, but essentially the dollar went the wrong way. But that was because when you looked at the details, what the market was looking at and expecting, that element of the report wasn't as good or as bad as the headline. So then the kind of move made sense. Does that make sense? But you can learn it. You definitely it's a great thing to have. Patrick, different traders perceive unexpected events differently. Is there any guideline into how unexpected is unexpected? Yeah, I mean, this again, there is a subjective element, I admit that, but essentially professional trading is about traders sitting at desks all around the world in different firms trying to beat each other, right? That's essentially what's going on. It's a big giant game of poker, and the person with the information the fastest, who acts the fastest and interprets it, the person who interprets that most like the rest of the market but fastest is the one who wins. So it doesn't matter if you're right. If a data point comes out and it should be good for the currency, but you know that the market will take it in a different way because of X, Y, or Z, that's the skill. It's reading and understanding the market, right? And that's why watching it every day, watching the price moves that follow, that will teach you about who the market is, how it operates. Or she, I don't want to get pulled into a sexist controversy. So that's essentially how it works. So I hope that helps. Any more questions? And just looking at them come through. Okay, Liangzi, the 50% discount is only valid for 72 hours. What happens after the first year? After the first year, I'm not actually sure, in fact, but basically, RANsquawk will contact you, and then I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure about that after the first year. I'm imagining you can just stay on the same plan, quite frankly. I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure that they will allow you to just stay on that. Because if this works, obviously, and lots of people take it up, then obviously it's something we can offer again. Ian, sometimes you use the news short-term sentiment changes to get a better buy and sell position on a currency I'm focused on. Yeah. So, for example, if something happened, and it's kind of like for example, here's an example. Let's look at this. A good example here. Let's just go to the charts. I'm kind of making this up, but just trying to illustrate the point. I think last week we had, sorry, 2 days ago, a couple of days ago, we had some Aussie data, right? So the Aussie data was quite good, but it didn't really change the big picture. So, for example, let's imagine that you are negative on the Aussie, you're selling Aussie, buying dollars, and then this news event comes out that gives the market a short-term boost, but you know really it doesn't change the big picture and things are still pretty much negative. You can then use that as an opportunity to sell at a better price. Exactly, you can do that. There's nothing off the top of my head happening this week that I can kind of call to mind like that, but you can do, yeah, you can do that definitely. John, in order to get the 50%, do I have to pay the year up front? Yes, that's the only way I could get them to, you know, go with it, basically. Jay, if you want to, yeah, I mean, basically what I would do actually is if you want to get the discount, all I would do is go to the membership. I would literally just click that link that I've put in there and just fill the form out, and just go through it. And then when you're on the phone to them, just explain, because they'll know that you've already got a subscription, so they'll give you a call and you can say, yeah, I just want to switch over to the 50% discount, and they'll sort you out. Yeah, okay, Ian, Euro New Zealand, you took a trade. Yeah, I remember that trade from this morning. So you took a trade on Euro New Zealand. It did that last night, exactly. So the thing, so yeah, there you go. So we had this news, right? We had this news that pulled the price down, right? And then this actual level is, we looked at this morning. This is Ian's entry. He actually bought it at 156.92, took it off around these highs. But yeah, essentially that's exactly right. Good tactic there. It works as well. And again, the news feed gives you that information quite quick, or very, very quick. Has anyone got any more questions about trading news feeds? Anything they've wondered? Anything they've been struggling with? You know, this is the opportunity to kind of get your questions answered. Stefan, if there's a significant negative news event in a currency, can we expect that there will be selling pressure across all 3 sessions? Yeah, again, depends. Like how much does it change the view? Like, so with the pound, it totally radically changed the way the market was viewing the pound, right? Because the Bank of England suddenly were not quite as all out dovish as they were anticipated. That brought a rate hike a bit closer. So therefore, the impact is going to have that more of an effect. If it's just a single data point, let's say GDP comes in better than expected, is that going to keep moving it up 3 sessions? No, probably not. You're probably going to get an initial spike and then maybe it'll die off and sell back down or whatever. Because that one figure isn't going to change the way the central bank's viewing things, right? That one figure isn't going to really change anything on its own, unless it's coming off the back of a series of figures producing the same kind of results. Like, you know, it's got the whole thing, you've got to build a story about what's going on so that when you get the news fast, you can then plug that into the story, and then you can say, right, does that change the story significantly? Does it add to the story significantly? Or is it kind of just the same? Liangzi, how tradable is the crude oil inventory data? Now, this is the other thing about trading news risk events. In 2014 and 15, oil was massively, oil inventories and oil related figures were massively tradable, and the Canadian dollar was moved heavily off it because oil prices were in the news. They were on everyone's lips. Oil was dumping. It hit like $25 a barrel. It was, you know, the biggest disaster that the world has ever seen. Now, in that environment, crude oil inventories are vitally important, right? In the current environment, what's moving the markets? Well, does anyone care about oil? To a degree, isn't kind of in the news, and Canadian dollar, you know, it's there, but it's at the moment, it's not something I would be looking at, you know, I'd be worried about. Like, for example, on the dollar, it's not something I would consider a big mover of the US dollar. What else is moving the dollar? Well, you've got Trump, you've got US data, which has kind of been a bit dodgy lately. You've got the Fed hike cycle. You know, are they going to hike in June or aren't they going to hike in June? Like, from now, between now and June, you'll find the market will start to get more and more obsessed with whether the Fed will hike, what the probability is, are they, aren't they, you know, and literally they'll be jumping around from one thing to the next just desperately trying to figure out and interpret every word that the Fed say about what's going to go on in June. They expect June to be a hike. So if those expectations start to fade away, like if you're like Stefan's question kind of fits in with this, right now I can tell you that the expectations for the Fed in June is about 75% probability of a hike. So all you need to do now, that's your kind of base. All you need to do now is have that figure in your head and then follow the news. And if you see that the expectations start to slip and drop, you'll also see dollar start to sell off, right? So that's being aware of what's in the news is important. And at the moment, for example, on the dollar, that's what's driving the dollar. It's all about the hike and all that stuff. Crude oil inventories today, not really, but that doesn't mean never. It all depends what the market's fixated on. Like I said, the market is like a person. You need to get into its head, understand what it's worrying about, what it's panicking about, where does it see as a really good opportunity at the moment. You need to really read it, and then you'll kind of understand which data points are important and which ones you need to watch, basically. Does that make sense? Okay, guys, anyone else got any more questions? I hope that helps. Okay, guys, no worries. So just if you want to get the 50%, I'll just take advantage of it. It's there. We managed to kind of get it in. You just go into the membership, click the link. In fact, you know what I could do? I could just post this link to the chat actually. So if you want to just there's a link in the chat box, not the questions box. Just click that link and that'll take you straight to the form. You just fill it out and then you'll instantly get your logins, temporary logins, and then you can have a look around and play around, and then RANsquawk will give you a call in a day or two to get your account set up properly. But everyone who goes through that form will get the 50% discount basically. And if for some reason you don't, just tell them that you've got it in there. Jay, how do you use the RANsquawk chat? Okay, so if you miss that, essentially the chat is, you need to, basically what you're looking for is the information. So if you see the price of a currency moving like 50 pips one way or the other, and you're a bit confused, you're not quite sure why a currency pair's moving, you've checked the news, you've looked at the calendar, you can't quite see why, you can go to the chat and say something like, you know, what is behind the current move on the Canadian dollar, or what's behind the current move on dollar CAD, and the analyst will then go away and they will gather all the research and bring you the information. So it saves you having to look, basically. Literally, you've got like your own little guy there. It's like you've got your own little professional analyst there, just sat there, you know, trawling the professional news feeds for your bidding, basically. It's pretty cool. Okay, guys, I can see that's the end of the questions. Yeah, I'll leave that there. The recording for this webinar will be uploaded into your membership area over the next 24 hours. So just check that out. Yeah, Jay, if you want it, we'll do a webinar on Icon. That's fine. We can do that for sure. And what I'll try and do is I'll try and squeeze some kind of deal out of them if we can. We'll see. I'll look into that. I'll talk to them. Okay, guys, thanks for that. Hope that's been helpful. And the webinar recording will be uploaded soon. And I hope you enjoy the feed. Cheers, guys.